The galaxy was vast, stretching beyond the comprehension of even the most advanced minds. It was a place of unimaginable beauty and unimaginable danger, teeming with alien life, both peaceful and hostile. However, amidst this seemingly endless expanse of stars, one question lingered in the dark corners of the universe. What made humanity so terrifying? As the stars twinkled in the distance, orbiting planets in a celestial dance, no one could have predicted the profound impact that the human species would have on the fabric of the galaxy. For millennia, advanced alien civilizations had evolved, thriving in their respective corners of the cosmos. They had built empires, explored distant worlds, and harnessed the power of stars themselves. Yet, despite their vast knowledge, something about humanity stood out. To the untrained eye, Earth, the home planet of humanity, seemed like a small, insignificant rock orbiting an average star, tucked away in the far reaches of a galaxy filled with far more advanced civilizations. But there was something unique about Earth's inhabitants, something that even the most sophisticated alien species could not ignore. The first hint of humanity's potential came from the mysterious broadcasts that began to emanate from Earth. At first, the alien civilizations dismissed the signals. They were primitive transmissions, nothing more than outdated broadcasts from a species still caught in the age of technology. But as the signals continued, something changed. The first real sign came when the long-range scanners of an advanced alien race, the Telkari, detected an anomaly. It was a strange energy signature that was unlike anything they had encountered before. The energy was not naturally occurring. It was being generated. The Telkari, with their advanced technology, were able to trace the source of the signature back to Earth. The Telkari were curious but cautious. They had long dominated the galaxy, and their empire stretched across hundreds of star systems. They had faced many species in battle, and no one had ever challenged their rule. But humanity, with its tiny blue planet at the edge of the galaxy, was different. They could feel it in the energy emanating from Earth. There was a potential here that was both intriguing and terrifying. The Telkari Council, a group of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, decided to send a reconnaissance mission to Earth. They needed to understand why this small species was emitting such a strange energy, and whether it posed a threat to their empire. The Council knew that humanity had not yet developed the technology to travel beyond their solar system. Still, there was something unsettling about the energy that had caught their attention. When the Telkari ship arrived in the Earth's orbit, the human species was still in the midst of their own struggle for survival. Earth was no stranger to war. It was a planet scared by conflict, where nations fought for power, resources, and survival. But it was the very nature of humanity's persistence, their ability to rise from the ashes of defeat, that drew the attention of the Telkari. There was a fire within humanity, a drive to survive and conquer that no other species seemed to possess. The Telkari began to observe Earth more closely, using their advanced technology to monitor human activities. They were shocked by what they saw. Humanity was not a race of peaceful beings, content to live in their small corner of the universe. They were driven by something far greater, something that set them apart from all other life forms in the galaxy. The Telkari began to notice the frequency of wars on Earth. Humans were constantly fighting amongst themselves, torn by political strife, economic instability, and resource scarcity. Yet, no matter how many times they were pushed to the brink of destruction, they always found a way to rebuild. With each new conflict, they grew stronger, more unified, and more determined to survive. They were a species of resilience and innovation, constantly evolving in the face of adversity. The Telkari had encountered countless alien species in their time, but none of them displayed the tenacity that humans did. Every other race they had come across had a breaking point, a limit to their will to fight. Not humanity. They were relentless, and this relentlessness made them dangerous. The more the Telkari observed, the more they realized that humanity's strength lay not in its technology or military power, but in its unyielding spirit. To the Telkari, this was an enigma. They had conquered countless worlds, enslaved entire civilizations, and subjugated entire species with ease. But humanity was different. They did not bend to oppression. They did not yield in the face of overwhelming odds. The Telkari began to fear that one day, this small, insignificant species would rise up and challenge their dominance. As the Telkari observed, they began to understand something even more profound. Humanity's greatest weapon was not just their spirit, it was their capacity for innovation. They were able to create tools, technologies, and strategies at a rate that was unmatched by any other species. While other civilizations had advanced to the point of technological stagnation, humanity continued to innovate. Every new conflict, every new challenge led to a new invention, a new way of overcoming obstacles. One of the most striking examples of this was the development of space travel. While most of the galaxy's civilizations had mastered spacefaring technology centuries ago, humanity had only just begun to explore the stars. Yet within a few hundred years, they had developed spacecraft capable of traveling beyond their solar system, all driven by the insatiable desire to explore, conquer, and survive. The Telkari were shocked. They had underestimated humanity. What they had assumed was a primitive species was, in fact, a race with boundless potential. They had a knack for survival that no other species possessed. If humanity could harness its full potential, it could become the most dangerous force in the galaxy. As the Telkari continued to observe, they began to realize the truth. Humanity was not just a threat to their empire, it was the future. The galaxy had always been ruled by the strong, by those who could conquer and control. But humanity was different. They did not conquer through sheer force. They conquered through resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability. The more the Telkari learned about humanity, the more they understood the true nature of their power. Humanity did not rely on brute strength or advanced weaponry. They relied on something far more powerful, the will to survive, to adapt, and to overcome. It was a power that no empire, no matter how advanced, could truly comprehend. As the first human spacecrafts began to explore the outer reaches of their solar system, the Telkari made a decision. They would not let humanity rise unchecked. They could not allow a species with such potential to challenge their dominance. The galaxy had been theirs for millennia, and they would not relinquish it to a race they had underestimated. But in their decision to suppress humanity, the Telkari made one fatal mistake. They underestimated humanity's greatest strength, the ability to rise in the face of adversity. The humans had always fought for survival, always found a way to adapt, and in the end, it would be this very quality that would define their future in the galaxy. The Telkari, an ancient and powerful race, had once ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. Their empire spanned countless star systems, and their advanced technologies made them seem invincible. For centuries, they had encountered species that fell to their might, bowing to their superior weaponry and technology. Yet there was one race in the farthest corner of the galaxy that they had underestimated: humanity. At first, the Telkari had seen humanity as no more than a curiosity, a species that would eventually crumble under the weight of the universe's harsh realities. They were small, technologically primitive, and embroiled in endless wars. But what the Telkari didn't realize was that humanity's true power lay in its unbreakable will to survive, a force that would soon shake the very foundations of the galaxy. It was a bitter winter on Earth when the first invasion came. Humanity had already endured countless struggles, wars, famines, political upheaval, and natural disasters. Despite the odds, they had always bounced back. But now, an alien force, the Telkari, was descending upon them, ready to conquer their world and assert their dominance. The invaders were confident. They had faced and crushed entire civilizations before. They assumed that humanity, divided and weak, would fall quickly. But they were gravely mistaken. The first sign of the invasion came when the skies above Earth darkened. The Telkari had arrived, their massive ships blotting out the sun. Humanity's military forces scrambled to respond, but they were outclassed in every way. The Telkari ships were massive, brimming with advanced weaponry, and capable of wiping out entire cities with a single strike. Yet the humans did not surrender. They didn't panic. Instead, they fought back. At first, it seemed hopeless. The Telkari began their assault, launching devastating attacks on Earth's cities and military installations. Governments fell, communication systems were destroyed, and humanity seemed on the brink of extinction. Yet, as the Telkari advanced, they began to notice something strange. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity didn't give up. There was no fear in their eyes, no sign of surrender. Instead, there was something much more dangerous: defiance. Humanity's response to the invasion was not one of retreat, but of adaptation. They weren't prepared for an intergalactic war, but they had an uncanny ability to improvise and innovate. Their scientists, engineers, and military leaders immediately set to work, using the few scraps of technology they had to fight back. They reversed-engineered Telkari weaponry, studying their enemy's technology and rapidly improving their own. As the war raged on, the Telkari began to realize something terrifying. Humanity was learning, adapting, and evolving at an astonishing rate. Every setback, every defeat, made them stronger. They didn't have the advanced weaponry or the powerful fleets of the Telkari, but they had something far more dangerous: their will to survive. In the underground bunkers of what was once New York City, a small group of human leaders gathered to formulate a plan. The city had been reduced to rubble, its towering skyscrapers nothing more than piles of debris. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was a glimmer of hope. Humanity's greatest weapon was not its technology, but its spirit. It was a spirit that refused to be broken, no matter the cost. We may not have their ships or their weapons, but we have something they don't have, said General Lillian Hayes, one of humanity's most respected military leaders. We have the will to survive, and we will not give up, not while we still breathe. The other leaders in the room nodded. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew that humanity had always triumphed in the face of adversity. It was this unyielding spirit that had carried them through every disaster, every war, and every challenge they had ever faced. And now, it would carry them through this. While the Telkari continued their assault on Earth, humanity's leaders began to rally their forces. They were outmatched in nearly every way, but they were not without hope. Every human soldier, every civilian, every scientist, and every engineer rallied together to fight back. The resistance began to form in secret, slowly but surely gaining ground against the invaders. It wasn't just the military that made a difference. Humanity's innovation and adaptability were the true keys to their survival. In laboratories and makeshift workshops, scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to develop new weapons and defenses. They used what they had: scraps of old technology, broken weapons, and even raw materials from the remnants of destroyed cities, to create powerful new devices. The human ability to adapt to any situation, to turn their limitations into strengths, began to turn the tide of the war. As the months passed, the Telkari began to grow concerned. What had started as a straightforward invasion was becoming a battle they hadn't anticipated. They had assumed that humanity would crumble under pressure, but instead, they were witnessing something extraordinary. The humans were not just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. One of the most significant turning points came when humanity managed to capture a Telkari warship. Using their newfound understanding of Telkari technology, human engineers worked day and night to reverse engineer the ship's weapons and systems. Within weeks, they had built a fleet of human warships capable of taking on the invaders. The humans, once powerless in the face of the Telkari's might, had created a fleet that rivaled their enemies in both speed and firepower. As the war raged on, humanity's unity grew stronger. The once divided nations of Earth began to work together as one. The lines between political ideologies, religions, and cultures blurred as humans united under a single cause: survival. The war, which had once seemed hopeless, was now a fight for the future of their species, And in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's unbreakable will was the force that kept them going. The Telkari, who had once looked down on humanity as a primitive species, now found themselves facing an enemy they could not defeat. The humans, who had started with nothing but their will to survive, had become a force to be reckoned with. It was clear to the Telkari now that their greatest mistake had been underestimating the power of the human spirit. As humanity's forces grew stronger, the Telkari began to retreat, their once dominant empire faltering in the face of humanity's relentless advance. The humans had fought not just with weapons, but with ingenuity, determination, and the belief that they would not be defeated. They had faced impossible odds and come out victorious. The Telkari, once the rulers of the galaxy, had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, the power of will. They had thought that the humans would crumble under their superior technology and strength, but they were wrong. Humanity had shown them that no matter how powerful an enemy may be, the will to survive could not be conquered. In the end, humanity emerged victorious. The Telkari were defeated, their empire crumbled, and their once feared warships lay in ruins. The humans, who had fought with nothing but their spirit and determination, had become the galaxy's most terrifying warriors. They had proven that their greatest weapon was not their technology or their weaponry, but their unbreakable will to survive. As the last remnants of the Telkari fleet retreated into the dark reaches of space, humanity stood tall. The battle for Earth had been won, but the war for the galaxy had just begun. And as the humans looked to the stars, they knew one thing for certain. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them with the same unyielding spirit that had carried them through the darkest days of their history. The war had already begun, and Earth was no longer the peaceful world it once was. For the first time in human history, the planet was caught in a galactic conflict that threatened its very survival. The Telkari, an ancient and highly advanced species, had arrived with one purpose: to conquer. But humanity, with its unbreakable will and indomitable spirit, was prepared to fight back. The skies above Earth had darkened when the Telkari warships descended from the stars. They were enormous, incomprehensible in size, and brimming with advanced weaponry. Each one was a fortress capable of laying waste to entire cities with a single blast. Their ships were more than just weapons of war. They were symbols of the Telkari's power and dominance. But in the face of this overwhelming force, humanity's defiance burned brighter than ever. Earth's military leaders, who had already been working tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable invasion, now had to rally their forces. What had initially seemed like a hopeless situation was now a battle for the future of humanity. Every corner of the globe had been mobilized, and nations put aside their differences in the face of a common enemy. The world, which had long been divided by politics and power struggles, was now united under one banner: survival. The first battles were brutal. Humanity's military forces were outclassed in almost every aspect by the Telkari. Their advanced weapons, impenetrable shields, and superior ships seemed like insurmountable obstacles. But humans were not afraid. They had learned, adapted, and innovated at an astonishing rate. Every day, new weapons and tactics were being developed. The fight was no longer about raw power. It was about intelligence, adaptability, and resourcefulness. The first major confrontation occurred in the Pacific Ocean, where a massive Telkari ship had emerged from orbit, its energy cannons charged and ready to fire. Humanity's newly developed fleet of warships, although smaller and less advanced, were the only hope for resistance. The humans knew they couldn't match the Telkari ship's firepower, but they also knew that they had one advantage: their resourcefulness. General Lillian Hayes, one of Earth's most respected military leaders, stood on the bridge of the flagship Valiant, overlooking the chaos below. Her face was stern, her eyes focused. She knew the odds were against them, but she also knew that the heart of humanity was stronger than any alien force. "We can't win by playing their game," she said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "We'll use their arrogance against them. Prepare the strike teams. We'll engage them from the blind spots, where their sensors can't track us. Her strategy was unorthodox. Rather than fighting the Telkari head-on, she ordered her fleet to use guerrilla tactics, attacking from unexpected angles and retreating before the enemy could retaliate. It was a risky move, but humanity's survival depended on it. The first few skirmishes were tense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Telkari, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer firepower, were caught off guard by the humans' ability to outmaneuver them. As the battle raged on, it became clear that humanity's resilience and ingenuity were beginning to pay off. The Telkari ships were powerful, but they were not invincible. Human warships, though slower and less technologically advanced, had been equipped with new experimental weapons designed to exploit the Telkari ship's weaknesses. One of these weapons, a plasma disruptor, was able to disable the shields of the Telkari ships temporarily, giving humanity's fleet a small window of opportunity to attack. Despite their initial success, the Telkari soon realized they had underestimated humanity. The more they fought, the more they came to understand that the humans were not the weak, primitive species they had once believed them to be. Humanity's ability to adapt, innovate, and fight for survival made them unpredictable. The Telkari were not accustomed to facing an enemy that did not fold under pressure. A pivotal moment came when a human squadron of fighters, flying under the radar, was able to strike a direct hit on a Telkari cruiser. The blast tore through the ship's outer hull, causing a massive explosion that sent debris scattering into space. The Telkari, who had relied on their overwhelming technological superiority, had been stunned by the audacity and effectiveness of the human attack. But the Telkari were not easily defeated. They quickly regrouped and adjusted their tactics. The next stage of the battle was fought with an intensity that shook the very foundations of Earth. The Telkari unleashed their full might, launching wave after wave of energy blasts that tore through Earth's cities and military installations. The destruction was catastrophic. Entire cities were wiped off the map, and the human death toll soared. Yet, through all the destruction, humanity never gave up. In the heart of the battlefield, General Hayes and her team made a bold decision. They would take the fight directly to the heart of the Telkari forces. With the elements of surprise on their side, they gathered a small but elite strike team of soldiers, engineers, and scientists. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the Telkari flagship and plant a device that would cripple the alien warship's core systems. The operation was fraught with danger. The Telkari flagship was heavily guarded, and the team had to navigate through enemy lines, using stealth and ingenuity to avoid detection. The team knew that failure meant certain death, but the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. As they approached the flagship, the tension was palpable. Every step was a calculated risk. Yet, as they infiltrated the ship's core, they realized the true extent of the Telkari's arrogance. The Telkari had believed that their technology was infallible. They had no reason to believe that humanity, with all its flaws and limitations, could ever be a real threat. But as the strike team planted the device, they discovered something even more troubling. The Telkari had underestimated the human ability to evolve, to change, and to overcome. Their advanced technology, which they had relied on so heavily, had one fatal flaw. It lacked the adaptability that made humanity so dangerous. As the countdown began, the strike team made their way out of the ship, narrowly escaping the blast radius. The device detonated with a force that sent shockwaves through the Telkari flagship, disabling its core systems and leaving the ship vulnerable. The Telkari, reeling from the sudden and unexpected blow, were forced to retreat. The humans had struck a devastating blow against the heart of the invaders' forces. The victory was short-lived, but it was a turning point in the war. Humanity had proven that it was not a species to be underestimated. The Telkari had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but instead they had found a species that would not be crushed, no matter the cost. The battle, however, was far from over. The Telkari regrouped and prepared for their next assault. But now they knew that humanity would not go down without a fight. The battle had only just begun, and the galaxy would soon learn what humanity was truly capable of. The war between humanity and the Telkari had raged for years. Earth, once a symbol of peace and hope, had been transformed into a battlefield. Cities lay in ruins, and the landscape was scared by the devastation of constant warfare. Yet through all the destruction, one truth had become clear. Humanity was far stronger, far more resilient than any of the alien invaders had ever imagined. The Telkari had underestimated the human spirit. They had believed that their advanced technology, their massive fleets, and their centuries of dominance in the galaxy would be enough to crush this small species. But humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, nor its technology. It was its unyielding will to survive. In the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, humanity had fought back with everything they had. And in the end, it was this spirit that would lead them to victory. The final battle for Earth was fast approaching. The Telkari had gathered their remaining forces, preparing for one last assault on the planet. They had lost many of their ships, their fleets severely damaged by the humans' ingenuity and persistence. But they were not ready to give up. They had come to conquer, and they would not leave until Earth was theirs. However, as the Telkari forces massed in orbit, something had changed in the human resistance. The people of Earth, who had once been divided by nations, by politics, and by war, had now united as one. The enemy had done what no human force had ever been able to do: bring together the world's people under a single banner. The human spirit had been forged in the fires of adversity, and now the entire planet stood united, ready to face the invaders. General Lillian Hayes stood on the bridge of the Valiant, humanity's flagship, overlooking the space battle taking place above Earth. Her face was grim but determined, and her mind raced with strategy. This was it, the final stand. There was no room for mistakes. The Telkari had thrown everything they had at humanity, and now humanity was ready to return the favor. "We fought them off before, and we'll do it again," General Hayes said, her voice firm and resolute. "This time, we end it. The Telkari have made the mistake of underestimating us. We have their technology, their tactics. But most importantly, we have something they'll never have: the human will to survive." The words echoed through the bridge, reaching the ears of every soldier and officer present. Humanity had come so far, but they were not done yet. The final battle would be fought not just with weapons, but with everything humanity had learned over the years. They had evolved, adapted, and innovated in ways the Telkari could never have predicted. And now, they were ready to face their enemies with a new strength. As the battle raged in the heavens, humanity's forces rallied. The Valiant and the remaining fleet of human warships were joined by civilian ships that had been retrofitted for combat. Every last resource had been thrown into the fight. The war had cost Earth dearly, billions of lives lost, entire cities reduced to ash. But it had also forged an unbreakable bond between the people of the planet. The divide that once separated them was now gone. They fought not as individual nations, but as one unified species. The Telkari, seeing humanity's resolve, began to realize that this war would not be easily won. Their once formidable fleet, which had effortlessly destroyed entire planets, was now struggling against humanity's renewed strength. Their warships, which had been feared across the galaxy, were no longer invincible. Humanity's weapons had improved, and their strategies had evolved. The Telkari, who had once believed themselves to be superior, now found themselves on the defensive.